Hello, fifth grade. You've made it to another Thursday. Today we're reading chapter 14 in Shield. And for your assignment, you are going to be making a drawing of something from this fictional world, a fictional plant or animal. The choices you have are a jalale, which is a fruit that was mentioned. Capnosian soldier gave it to Bokmal. There's a Darby that the little girl found, Taruda that was being hunted, and beret, which is just mentioned as a meat. So what's really cool is that when we read books, we're all imagining Capnos, and we're all imagining Sarda, and we see Stone Court, Nethro's chamber, but we're all imagining it differently in our heads. And when I say Darby, every single one of you has a different picture in your mind of what that Darby was like. So I want you to draw to the best of your ability. You know my ability, it's not much. I'm not going to be hard on you about that. To the best of your ability, draw what you are imagining these fictional things to look like. Okay, get your book. Let's turn to page 14. You can read this independently today, or you can read along with me. Let's jump in. Page 82. Change of direction. Tanar had no small consternation when his spy returned with a woman prisoner. He immediately sent her on to Colonia with strict orders that she was to be protected as any lady of Cordus would be. He commanded 2 of his personal adjutants to see her to Rydkin. They were to deliver her into the keeping of the governor's house. To Deja he said, "I think you understand why I cannot let you go home just yet." On this same journey, he also sent Ness under guard, with orders to deliver him to the Capnos soldiers there. He wanted no unnecessary drain on his resources on the brink of possible battle. He sent a rider to intercept the army coming from the sea, advising the king to go to the southeast of the city instead of directly to the east. At least, he thought, the spy had brought him some good information as well as a prisoner. So did Tanar want to have a prisoner? No. Oh, he's like, oh no, now you brought this lady too. But hold on, because something good will happen from it. Spoiler, sort of. All right, then he prepared his army to move northwest, should his king agree with the assessments he had sent, and waited. Scene change. Leorian made no move to stop Calla's arrest. The king's personal guard was too heavy, and his own best men were on the western parapets. So would he have tried to stop them from arresting Calla? Yeah, but he knew he couldn't. He knew that she would be taken to a cell on the lower north side, so he waited until she passed out of his sight. Then the soldiers guarding him stood aside, and he went out the other way to his attaché, who was waiting to take him to Miras. "Leorian!" She came toward him, and he thought she was more beautiful now than when they were young. Leorian gave a little toss of his head. The attaché discreetly went away. Miras looked at her husband, trying to read his news without asking. He took her hand, and they sat down together, she on the padded chair, and he on the wide ledge on the window. He told her that Calla had been confined, and for what cause. Miras put her hand to her mouth, but she nodded. They both understood Calla well. It would have been more surprising had she capitulated to the king's threats. Miras knew this without his saying it, that she would not see Calla. She also knew that their loyalty to the Sarda they had once known was not going to be enough to restore their homeland to its glory. Leorian drew the small pouch from under his belt. "Take this," he said. "This is the cure for Banazar poisoning, which she withheld from Nethro. Take it out of here. Keep it safe." Miras took it. She parted the opening of the pouch with her finger, and the bottle inside glittered. "What about you? Who will keep you safe?" She looked up at him with the same bright eyes that had captured him long ago by the fountains one spring morning. He leaned toward her and pulled her within his arms. "I'm sorry you have had to lead a soldier's life too, being married to me. You could have had an easier life." She squeezed her eyes tight to keep the tears from telling on her. Her voice was steady. "Perhaps, old man, but none better." Aren't they sweet? Scene change. Nethro's chamberlain asked to see Carax, but the prince had left the city. He was, in fact, south of Rubrum again. The rumors of his capturing Grelds and training them as engines of battle were more than rumors. He had a dozen of the giant lizards in palisades, and many men experimenting with ways to control them. Clearly, he's never watched Jurassic World. The lizards, when standing upright, were taller than the poles of the palisades. And that's like Star Wars Episode 2, at the end, where Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme are chained to those big old poles. And they, like, the beasts come after them. It'd be like the beasts are chained to the poles. Okay. The lizards, yeah, I read that. They swung their massive tails against the earth, and the ground shook under the men who had charge of them. Several men had already been killed trying to rig bit and bridle onto the reptilian heads. Carax observed the work with the beast. They did not respond to the bits. It was as though they did not even feel them. One day, as a Greld was being forced from one palisade to another, its tail was shut in the heavy gate accidentally. It roared with pain and became suddenly subdued. That means calmer. Carax commanded that the tail of another Greld be cut off some little way from the tip. That Greld also roared and then went passive. "Well," said Carax to the man in charge of the palisades, "I think we may have hit upon a way to make this weapon workable. Put an iron ring through the stump of that tail and let us see whether we can turn this monster at will." So he found a way to master the Grelds and make them manageable by cutting off their tail part way. If you love animals, you're probably not happy with him. At the gates of Riken, Deja sat upon her horse, waiting for her escorts to gain passage into the city. To her left and back, Ness had been allowed to dismount and stand. He leaned forward and then backward, stretching his shoulders and neck. Deja could tell he was not accustomed to long rides. He was wearing the leggings and tunic of a cap-nosed soldier, but the cloak and boots of a sardine. He glanced up at her and smiled. She looked away. Just inside the gates, a Colonian messenger on horseback thrashed to a stop on the packed snow. His horse had not even collected its stance before the rider was on the ground. He spoke urgently to the commander there. Deja did not understand Colonian. The messenger looked her way and back to the commander, seeming to question him about her and the others waiting. Deja tried to ask her escort what was the matter, but he held his hand up slightly to indicate that he was listening. From behind, Ness said, "Your ladyship, I speak Colonian. If you wish, I could translate." Deja half turned in her saddle and nodded. "The man is asking whether a refugee, Rude from Diter, came this way. It seems this man Rude knows where to find a woman whose granddaughter's life stands upon the edge of a knife." Deja adjusted her seat in the saddle to look back at the messenger. "Oh," she said. Ness listened a moment more. "The woman they want to find is a healer named Calla." Instantly, Deja faced him again. "Calla? Calla of Diter? I mean, this is her aunt." Her eyes flashed with surprise. "Tell them Calla is not in Diter. She is in Rubrum at Stone Court." She grasped the elbow of her escort. "Listen." The man looked at her. She pointed to Ness, who told him what had been said. The escort stood in his stirrups and shouted to the Colonian commander. The Colonian came out to him, and when he understood, immediately dispatched the messenger. Deja looked at Ness again. He said, "The messenger has been sent to the governor, and we are to follow hard upon." Anera, now we're switching to Anera, and this is just weird. Remember, it's about to say she lingered in the juncture of the cavern. She is not in cavern, she's in a tent, and she is having delusions. This is just like a dream. Anera still lingered in the juncture of caverns. Now the fire there was lower, and she was lying down. The flicks of light on the ceiling moved and converged into their own constellations. They seemed high, and she strained to see them. The dome above her spun slowly to the right. When it stopped at last, she made out the constellations. an eagle with a ring in its beak and a beacon on its talons. Then the dome spun slowly to the left. She knew she should be able to interpret the design, but she could not remember where she had seen it before, and she was too tired, too deep in her bones to try. She closed her eyes. Scene change. What? The Chamberlain of Nethra was sweating through the hallway. Sweating? Oh, though. Not sweating through. Oh, sweating, though the hallway was damp and chill. The torch on the wall flickered, making his scowling countenance look more jowly than ever. How could you let the girl get away? She was on horseback. I followed some ways, but light failed. The man was clad in sardine tunic and sleeves, but his boots were like those of Dyer. He wore a string of feathers braided into his long hair. No matter, she will die soon enough. So who is the Chamberlain talking to? It's that bad guy that shot an arrow. That shield you have. Hand it over in the name of the king. The other man laughed. I have no king but myself. He took out a knife and fingered its edge. What is the shield worth to you? Fool, you think I came here unaccompanied? If I raise my voice, you will die before you can draw a breath. You think I would bring the shield with me? Not that I have that much trust for your word or your king's. I have a price on that shield. You are a sardine soldier, the king's own shield bearer. Was, the man said. Was a sardine. He pointed to the owl feathers in his hair. Would a real sardine wear these? Then he leaned into the Chamberlain, laying the knife against his cheek. Now I am but a man in possession of something you want. Call out if you wish, little man, but I did not come alone either. You traitor! Ha! This from a sniveling piece of the likes of you. Did you not make the poison that is killing your king? What? And are you not the one who wants the shield I traded for, and handsomely to control him, even as he suffers now? I gave you the Banazar for the king's sword blade. It is not my doing that a drop touched him, is it? The man took the Chamberlain's neck in his thick-gloved hand. Nor is it mine. Do not test me. The Chamberlain squirmed. What is your price? The man smirked and pulled back from the trembling Chamberlain. I've decided it's priceless. I can make better use of it than you can. Oh, Mr. Chamberlain man is worse than we thought. Can't wait to see your art. Now, tomorrow's Friday. Use it well. If you don't understand the things that you have zeros on, you need to give me a call. My phone number's on the reading tab. Anytime from 9 to 9. See you later. Miss you guys. Bye-bye.